Okay, in this video, I'm going to recap what we covered in class in using the halftone function in Photoshop to be able to create a little bit more abstraction and graphicness in your work. So I know you've already seen this before, so I'm going to do a quick little recap of it. This image is actually already in grayscale, but this is something you could do in RGB as well. And if you did have it in RGB, you'd simply go desaturate Shift Command U or image adjustments desaturate. Now you notice desaturate's nulled out on this because I'm already in grayscale mode. Um, I mean, ultimately, it's up to you if you want to go to grayscale as an interim step. You're going to have to do it anyway at some point, so it's no harm in doing that right now. What we want to do is isolate what's actually here, not so much the paper, but what's happening to the type. Like I was saying in class, you could use this, crop it, use it just as it is, but in a lot of cases, you're really kind of not allowing the closure for people to see by having it be so representational. So if I go to my levels, which is Command L, and kind of squeeze those values a little bit, polarize those values, I can almost get it to a bitmap situation, which is basically black and white. Okay. Um, but in this case, I'm not pinching them so far like this, because that would turn it just black and white. Because maybe I want some of those gray tones to be factored in when I go to do the half toning process. Okay, so remember, half toning is where we're using really a screen of dots, or they could be other shapes. They could be squares, they could be diamonds, they could be crosses that essentially work like a stippling effect to create value, and it's a great way to create abstraction in your pieces. So let me say that I'm happy with that, okay? And I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. Um, I may want to get rid of some of the excess here. So let me go ahead and crop this down a little bit because maybe I don't need all that other stuff for this as I'm going to be using it in a piece. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here is give you the opportunity to use these kinds of things in your pieces if you want to, because it'll just give so much more freshness to the things that you execute on, not looking so computery. So one thing I'm going to do here is in my layers, let me see here, one moment. Oh, my layers are there. They're just kind of hiding. Where you at? I have got some of this stuff in the way from the Zoom interface that you guys can't see, so bear with me here. Okay, so I'm just going to create another layer here that I'm going to turn white on the bottom just so I can avoid just having plain transparency in the background. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all this extra gray stuff that I don't necessarily want. You'll recall I'm going to go to Layer Mask right here in the bottom of the layer palette, hit that, and now I can start either taking out swaths of that extra stuff using my marquee tool. This is my marquee rectangle, and painting with black. Remember down in the bottom here, you can hit this little toggle button to get those values to change foreground to background. But if you just hit X, it'll do the same thing. So that'll save you a little bit of time. You want the black to be the foreground chip. And if you do that and you use the fill function of Option Delete, then you can start essentially painting black in that layer mask, but it's essentially taking all those things out. Okay, not painting them white, but actually removing them. Oops, let me do that again. And you can kind of catch the vision of it. If I eliminate that bottom layer of white, you can see that I'm actually taking away the pixels. But the nice thing is it's temporary if I want it to be, because I can always go back and paint with white and it will bring it back. Okay, so let me go ahead and put the background there so that we have the white. And then I'm going to go in there. I'm going to paint in black, but I'm going to use a brush this time. So either go to your brush tool or hit B for brush. And I'm going to use a soft brush here so you can see it set soft. It's got a little bit of a feather on it. So I'm going to go in and paint with a little bit of reduced flow. So you can see this defaults to 100, but you can get it down to like something low and go in there with a soft brush and kind of finesse some of these values that you don't want to necessarily have be completely struck out. I want to bring back some of this. So I'm going to paint in white right here. It's going to bring some of that back. And let's see what else might be there that I wanted to keep. Okay, let's say that I want to use that. Now, I could just use this as is. Let me go ahead and I'm going to save a copy of this as test one, test 01, and I'll do that as a TIFF. We don't want to use a JPEG or a ping for print files. So I'm going to do a TIFF, no layers, and LZW compression, hit OK. Okay, that's been saved off. The other version I want to do of this is a halftone version of this. Now, it is possible to do halftoning in Illustrator. It's a little less, I think, delicate with your stuff, but I don't know. I recommend doing it this way. Uh, the fidelity of your dots, though, are definitely affected by the resolution that you start with. So this particular file is 300 dpi. You can see it right there. But you can see it's about little over 4 inches, little over two, well, actually close to 3 inches in size. Okay. So the dots will be a little tighter than if it were a 72 dpi resolution. It would even be better if it were like, 5 or 600 dpi. Now, granted, typically for print, all you need is 300 dpi. But when you're doing things like this, when you're doing image trace, when you're doing half toning, the more resolution, the better. You can always size things down, but it's hard to go the opposite direction with a bitmap like this. So I'm going to give it a different look. In this case, instead of you doing it like sort of the grayscale image that I already saved off, I'm going to turn it into a bitmap. And to do that, I need to go to mode. Gotta get off my layer mask. Mode bitmap. Okay, I'm already in grayscale, going to bitmap. Latin layers, that's fine. And when you go to bitmap, typically it'll give you 50% threshold as sort of the default setting. But I want you to drop down to halftone screen for this. And you can experiment. Once you hit OK, you can experiment with the frequency, the angle, the shape, round versus line versus crosses versus squares. It'll just give you a different increment to be able to populate all those different values. So I'm going to go with round and I'm going to hit OK. Boom. So you can kind of see how now I've got these really graphic, essentially black and white. There's no gray in here at all anymore. Not like in my grayscale images. Now you can see even at 300 DPI, there's a little bit of maybe that lo-fi is okay for what I'm going to be using it for. If I wanted those dots to be smoother, I would just make sure that the resolution was higher, which means I would just use the higher resolution image when I send it from my phone camera to my computer. I would make sure I get the fatter version of this, and that will give me smoother shapes. Okay, let me save this off. You can do it as a tip. You can also just do it as a Photoshop file. It works either way. And I'm going to call this one test 02. Okay, because both formats will work. I just have to make sure that they're grayscale or bitmap. Now, they don't have to be a PST. They don't have to be a TIFF. Both of them work. The reason why I mean, I would use one or the other because those are going to be more appropriate towards print. If I were doing something digital, then it doesn't really matter as much. But since I'm going to print and pixels do matter, I definitely want to use file formats that are friendly to print. I'm going to hit OK on that. Now I'm going to go over to Illustrator. I'm going to go to, and this is what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get at being able to bring the raw, not raw, but now we've treated these graphics so we can bring them now in Illustrator and create some interesting effects. So I'm going to go new, hit OK, and I'm going to place my graphic. Where's test? Oh my gosh, where did I put those? Did that go to down? Oh yeah, it went to downloads. Wow. Silly me. Boom and boom. Okay. So two different treatments. One's grayscale and one is bitmap. Okay. Now, the utility of having them either be grayscale or bitmap is that I can go into my swatches and just drop colors. If I select the image, drop this color, I get that to fill in blue, and now I'm going to fill the other one in orange. Okay. Might be a little saturated. I can always adjust values, but one is definitely on top of the other here. So to create that illusion of overprint, because this is what I really want to get at, aside from the half toning, is that you can fake overprinting like silk screening here. If you go into the appearance palette, if you don't have the appearance palette up, just go to Window Appearance, okay? And notice that the fill here is registering as the orange. Nothing's in the stroke. We don't need anything in the stroke. But I'm going to go over to the opacity setting and I'm going to go from normal to multiply. And now when I overlap it with, oops, when I overlap it with my other type, I get this cool little overlap, which, I might want to tilt it or something. Ooh, whoa, what happened? I might want to tilt it a little bit, not that much, to create, like a misregistration perhaps, or just kind of an interesting dynamic that's not perfectly lined up because something that's really nice here is just the happy accidents you get with the overlap. Okay. I can always go in there in the appearance palette and adjust opacity. Okay. Or I can go ahead and just drop, customized colors that I make. So I've got the default swatches, but I could also, let me see where my tools are. I could also just double click and go into the picker and just make new things. Okay. Find a nice combination that I like. Okay. And fill that, or excuse me. Ooh, what am I doing here? Use that. Oh, I just lost the thing I made. Oh, here it is. I think that's here. Yeah. Um, put it into my graphic. Let me move all the way for you guys. Okay, so use this to your advantage in creating some interesting effects. You could use this in your collage. You could use this, obviously you're going to want to customize your collages and your type choices. You're not going to use these words that I'm giving you. You're going to create your own headlines, but it's nice because it makes your headlines graphic, and so you're kind of getting, a two for one where you're able to communicate with language, but you're also able to say something really interesting in a graphic that doesn't need a picture added, perhaps. Okay. But, see how this works, mix and match things. We want to be able to create posters that reflect um, a 2 to 3 color palette. This is actually only two colors because I'm getting a third out of the overlap, which is completely fine. But you could add a third color if you want to, as maybe, like let's say your background, that could be another thing. But the whole point is to be able to essentially see what we've got it here. No, no, where is it at? There we go. Is just to kind of create something that is more dynamic than what we usually what we're plagued with is too much representation. So how do we take this imagery and still get the meaning out of it, but augment it and magnify it so that it's coming off more graphically, more interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with these different techniques to make your work more compelling. All right, that's it. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Thanks.